Now imagine you have some data somewhere and you're looking to automatically generate a fully functioning mobile app to display and work with the data. And that is actually a lot easier to do than you think. And so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how you can create a self-generating app that essentially takes some data and creates a fully functioning mobile app from that data. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I demonstrate on this channel are going to be available to view and or clone from my Patreon page. And you can learn more about our amazing Patreon community using the link in the description below the video. Now, before I show you the actual app, I want to show you an architecture diagram that better explains exactly what we're going to be doing today. So today I'm going to be showing you a mobile app generator, and the way that this thing is going to work is that you're going to have some data somewhere. So for instance, you may have that data in Google Sheets, which is what we're going to be using today, but it doesn't need to be just Google Sheets. It could be pretty much anywhere. And in Google Sheets, we're going to be storing two types of data. Okay, we're going to have the actual app data, right? This is the actual data that we're going to be displaying in the app. And we're also going to be storing settings. And these are going to be actual app settings that you're going to be using to generate your app. You're going to see exactly what I mean in just a little bit. Now, you can also generate all of this data using ChatGPT right inside of Google Sheets, which I'm going to show you how to do as well. Now, after you have all of this data stored in Google Sheets, we're going to be using Google Sheets official API interface. So we're going to be using this interface to connect to Google Sheets and pull that data into our mobile app generator. And once we've pulled all of that data using an API, the app is going to generate itself. And so the final result is going to be a fully generated mobile app using the data and the settings that you have here in Google Sheets. So now that you have a general idea of how the whole flow works, let me show you an app that I built that does just that. So here we are inside of Flutterflow, which is my favorite no-code builder. And before I show you how exactly I build this app, let's go ahead and run this app so that you can see the whole flow firsthand. And here we're creating a test environment and waiting for the app to load. All right, so here's our app. And the first thing that it wants to know is the Google Sheets ID. Okay, so once you specify the Google Sheets ID, here's my Google Sheets ID right here. Next thing you want to do is click connect. Once you do that, it's going to be fetching data. And as soon as it finishes getting the data and the settings, it goes out and generates a fully functioning mobile app. So here's the app that was generated for us. And as you can see, we have the search functionality. We are also displaying various categories here. And we're also displaying the various items that we stored in our Google Sheets. So in this case, we're displaying a bunch of tech items and various information that we have stored in our data source, which is Google Sheets. And what's cool about it is that I can click here and we're going to be redirected to a details page. And let's say I want to purchase this item, I can actually click on it and it's going to redirect me to a specific URL that I specified in our Google Sheets. Now, the app that was generated comes with various components that are fully customizable. So for instance, here we have a search component, which allows users to search for specific items. So for instance, I can type iPhone, press enter, and I'm only seeing an iPhone. I can, press OLED, press enter, and I'm seeing some OLED product. In this case, this is an LG OLED TV. I can also type Galaxy, and I'm going to be seeing a Galaxy phone right here. Now, apart from that, we're also displaying various categories as part of our search results. So if I type Samsung, here I'm going to be displaying the various categories as part of my search results. So I'm displaying displays, and I'm also showing phones, which you can see here. If I clear this, I'm displaying all the categories. Now, let's say I enter Sony. Well, in this case, I'm only going to be looking at Sony products. So we have headphones and we have a PlayStation. So we have games and we have headphones right here. And so not only does it come with various components on this page, but you can also customize them. So for instance, let's say you do not want to display search. Well, All you need to do is go to your Google Sheets and specify that you do not want to display search. If you do not want to display categories, you can go to your Google Sheets and specify that you do not want to display categories as well. Now, let's say the user is checking out this app and they're browsing and they're interested in a specific product. So all they need to do is click on it, and we're going to be redirected to a detail page. And this detail page is also fully customizable. So you have a button that's fully customizable. I'm actually specifying the URL in Google Sheets. And so whatever URL is specified in Google Sheets for this product is going to be the URL that the user is going to be redirected when they click on this button. And everything else is completely customizable. Now, let's say you've updated some data, maybe you've deleted some records or created new records, and you want to regenerate this app. Well, in that case, all you need to do is go to this tab right here, which is our settings tab, specify your Google Sheets, press connect, and it's automatically going to refresh the data and regenerate this app. All right, so now that you've seen the proof of concept, let me show you what's happening in the backend, where we're getting the data. And then I want to show you how I built this app. All right, so here's our backend data source. We are using Google Sheets, and we are using two sheets here. Okay, so we have the data sheet and we have the settings sheet. So in the data sheet, we have a list of various products that we want to display in our app. So in this data sheet, we have a list that's displaying various tech products. And in the sheet, we have various columns, which are going to be automatically translated as fields. So we have the name, we have the specs, we have a category, which is going to be used for the category bar up on top. We have the image URL, and we also have the purchase URL. Now, if we go into settings, you will see the various settings that I'm using in order to customize the app. So here we have various settings to customize the appearance, for instance. So we have the list background color, which is the background color that we want to display various list items. We have the detailed background color. We have the list item box shadow, which is a color that I'm specifying for the box shadow on the list page. We also have a category bar and the search bar. And so, for instance, if you do not want to display the search bar, all you need to do is delete this. And now all we have to do is go back to our app and regenerate. So I'm going to click on connect, and it's going to fetch all the data and the settings. And now we are not being shown this search bar. And you can do the same thing with the category bar. So I can just click here, delete it, go back to our app, go to the settings, regenerate the app by refetching the data. And now, as you can see, the category bar is no longer being shown as well. So I can go back here and re-enable it, go back to our app, go into settings, refresh the data. And now it's going to be showing everything back here again. Now, this is definitely not all the things that you can customize. You can customize pretty much anything that you want. It's just a question of how far you want to go with it. If you want to customize every little bit, you want to customize the font, the colors, you can customize all of that in your app by simply introducing new fields here and specifying their values. Now, when it comes to generating data, you can generate all the data that you need using ChatGPT right inside of Google Sheets. And for that, you need an extension called ChatGPT for Docs, Sheets, and Slides. And so you can simply go into extensions, you can go to add-ons, manage add-ons, and as you can see, I have this extension called GPT Workspace installed. And so it's a great extension that allows you to harness the power of ChatGPT right inside of Google Sheets. And once you have this extension installed, you're going to be seeing a panel that looks something like this. And you're going to have access to 4 new functions. So you're going to have GPT, GPT list, GPT table, and GPT translate. And so I actually use GPT table to generate the data that I showed you in the other sheet. And so all you need to do is choose this function right here and then specify the prompt that will describe the kind of data that you want. So for instance, top 10 most eaten fruits and their nutrition data, you can do that if you want. Or you can do something like top 20 popular tech products, which is a prompt that I used to generate the data that you're seeing right here. So all of this is very, very easy to generate with this very, very useful extension. Now, after you create your Google Sheet data source, the next thing you want to do is you want to share it, right? So you want to click here and you want to make sure you have this setting set. Anyone with the link, you want to make sure that your Google Sheet is publicly accessible, and that way your app can access it. Now, last but not least, you want to head over to Google Cloud and enable the Google Sheets API. So if you type Google Sheets right here, click on Google Sheets API, you will see that I should have this functionality enabled. So as you can see, it says here API enabled, and I can manage it. For you, it's going to say something like enable this API. So you want to enable this API, then you want to go back to Google Cloud and you want to create an API key that you're going to be using with your Google Sheets. So I already have this key created right here, and all you need to do is click here and click on API key. And that is going to be the key that you're going to be using with your Flutter Flow app. All right, so now that you've seen how I set up my Google Sheets, let me show you how I build the actual Flutter Flow app to regenerate itself using the data stored in Google Sheets. And by the way, if you're a member of our amazing Patreon community, you're going to have access to this Flutter Flow app and also to my Google Sheets template that you can simply populate with your own data and get started right away. All right, so here's our Flutter Flow app. The first thing that we need to do is we need to set up our API calls to connect to Google Sheets. So you can head over to this API calls tab right here. And I have two calls. I have get data and get settings. And so get data is using this official Google API to connect to our data sheet. And get settings is using this URL to connect to settings. And so if you go to get data, do a test API right here, you will see that the response is essentially the data that we have stored in our Google Sheets. And in this case, I'm essentially getting all the rows. So this is the header row, this is the first row, this is the second row, the third row, etc., etc. Essentially, it's a list of products that we have stored in Google Sheets. And the same thing is going to happen when we execute this second API call, but we're going to be getting the settings information instead of the data. Now, once you have those API calls set up, the next thing that you need to do is you need to create your various pages here. So we have 3 pages. We have the settings page, we have the list page, and we have the details page, okay? Now on the settings page right here, this is where we are asking the user for the Google Sheets that they want to be using. I'm actually specifying my own Google Sheets as the initial value, but in production, you definitely want to remove all this so that the user can enter their own Google Sheet ID. Now, once they enter their Google Sheet ID and press connect, we're going to go ahead and fetch all of the information from their Google Sheets. And as we're fetching it, we are going to be updating the status. So here I have a text widget that's pulling status from page state, okay, that our whole workflow is going to be automatically updating, right? So if we go into this connect right here, we have 9 actions here. So if we open this up, what we're doing is we're updating app state. And so we're getting that Google Sheets ID. We're setting in the app state because we actually need that variable in order to connect to Google Sheets. And then we're also updating the status that the user is seeing. So it's going to say fetching data. It's going to say fetching settings, etc., etc. Now, once we save the Google Sheets ID and we also told the user what's happening, we have a backend call that first gets the data. Okay, if we are successful there, we're going to be updating our app state with the data that we got because we're going to be storing the data on an app state basis. After we're done, we're doing a backend call, and this is where we are pulling the settings. Now, as we're pulling the settings from the Google Sheets, we're also updating the status. We're essentially telling the user that we're fetching settings. Next, we are saving all the settings in the app state. We're waiting 1 second just to display the user what's happening, and then we're navigating to the list. Now here on the list page, we are displaying the various components with the data and the settings that we fetched from the user specified Google Sheets. So we have the search functionality, we have the various categories that are fetched from the Google Sheets. And here we have a list view that essentially shows the items that were fetched from the Google Sheets right here. Now at the top level, I'm doing a quick check to make sure that we have the actual data. So right here, I have an action at the top level that checks if we have the actual data stored in the app state, right? So I'm checking our app state data if we have the actual data, okay? Because if we do not have any data, we want to navigate the user to the settings, because otherwise we have nothing to display. So that is why we want to navigate the user to the settings right away. And if we go to our app state right here, we are storing various information that we're going to be using throughout the app. So for instance, here we have Google Sheets ID, which is what the user enters in the settings screen. Here we have the data, and here we have the settings. Now, all of this information here, we want to be storing as app state variables so that they are accessible throughout the app. This is very, very important. Now, after we have that data stored as app state variables, we're not done yet. We still need to change how that data is being displayed. We need to reformat that data. And for that, I created several custom functions that essentially take data or take settings and they reformat it into a format that's going to be very, very easy to display different items from the Google Sheet. So here I have parse data, which is essentially a small function that takes the data that we got from Google Sheets via the API and it reformats it, making it a lot easier to display it on the front page, as I'm going to show you in a second. And the same thing we're doing for settings. I have a very, very small function right here that essentially takes this data right here in the settings and formats it in a way that's going to be a lot easier to kind of work with that data. And I also have another custom function called get categories. And the purpose of this function is to take the data that's specified as category right here and create a unique list out of it. So as you can see, we have all of these categories here, but we have categories that are being repeated and we do not want to show repeated categories. So that function takes all of this data here and creates a unique list out of it. And it also sorts it alphabetically so that we can display it on that list page very, very easily. Now, once all of that data is formatted, it becomes very, very easy to display the right fields pretty much anywhere in the app. And this is where you can come in and you can customize this app further. You can essentially display any value in Google Sheets a lot easier. And so if you're looking to take this app and to customize it and to create any kind of custom mobile app generator for your users, then you want to be paying attention here, because what I'm about to tell you is going to make your life a lot easier when it comes to actually customizing this app. So as an example, here I have a list view that displays all the items that we pulled from Google Sheets. And the way that I'm displaying these items is that I'm first using generate dynamic children here. And as I talked about, I'm using parse data to give me this data. Now, once I have this data, all I need to do is create a widget and specify the type of data. So this is name, this is specs right here. And if you go to our Google Sheets, you can see that this is name, this is specs, this is image URL, purchase URL. And if you go back to your app, you can see this image right here. Scroll down, this is image URL. And so this makes it super easy to create pretty much any field that you want and then specify so that it can reference the data in your Google Sheets. And so what this essentially means is that all the heavy lifting is already done. And so all you need to do is, for instance, you want to create a new field, you can just do something like this, and you can create a field called weight. So for instance, if you want to specify the weight of the item, so here you can specify 100, this is like, let's say 100 grams. And then all you need to do is come back here and you can just duplicate this. So let's say I want to duplicate this right here. Obviously, it's going to be different as you're building this app. And then all you need to do is go to your text widget, come back here and you can specify weight, and you're gonna have the weight of the item, assuming that you have all the data and that column filled in Google Sheets, and your data is going to be displayed here if you specify it like this. And so I'm gonna go ahead and delete this right here. And so you're free to create your own widgets, images, etc., and simply specify what kind of data that image or that text widget or that URL, etc., needs to be populated with. Next, we're going to go to the details page, and on the details page, you have access to all the data that we specified in our list page and all the data that you have stored in Google Sheets. So depending on what item the user clicks on, you're going to have access to all the data for that specific item. And so you can fill all of this out exactly the same way. Now, for the purchase, I'm using a custom action that automatically redirects to a specific URL. So here I'm using purchase URL. And if we go to our Google Sheets, you will see that we have here purchase URL. Now here I'm using a dummy URL of news.com. But if you go ahead and specify specific URLs for your products that maybe you want to redirect your users to, your users will be redirected to these URLs because we're using values from this field here as an action on this clickable button. And obviously, as was the case with the list page, you can easily customize this details page as well and have it behave exactly how you want. Now, I spent some time talking about how you can customize your app by pulling in the right data from your backend data source. But we also have a settings sheet, and your app can change its behavior, it can change its look and feel depending on the various settings that you have. So for instance, if we go back to our Google Sheets and click on the settings sheet right here, I have various settings, and this is just the beginning. You can customize your app by having 10 settings, 100 settings, 200 settings. It's really up to you how far you want to take it. But let me show you exactly how that is done. So if you go back to your app right here, and as you can see, our search bar, this is our search bar right here. And the thing about our search bar is that it's customizable. So for instance, it has a conditional that is set whether we want to display the search bar or not. And so we have here a condition that if you click on it, you will see that search bar needs to be set for this to be displayed. And what is search bar? Well, search bar is this field right here. So if you delete this field, you're not going to see the search bar. Same thing with the category bar. If you go to our category bar, you will see that it also has a conditional. Category bar needs to be set. And what is category bar? Well, category bar is a field in our app state for settings. And so thanks to all the heavy lifting that the app does, when it actually grabs this data and it formats this data and it parses this data, all you need to do is specify the specific settings fields like this. And so you can take your app, create various conditions that will dictate whether certain parts of your app will be displayed or not. Now, there's also more. You can use these settings to specify how different UI elements are displayed. So for instance, here I have a list view container. And if I scroll down, there's so many things that I can configure. So for instance, I'm using shadow color, and I'm using a function called color from string. And if I click on it, I'm using a field called list item box shadow. And if we go here, you will see that we have list item box shadow. And here I'm specifying a color that will be used as a box shadow for this item container, okay? And so if you click on any of the fields in Flutterflow here, and you go to the property panel and you scroll down and you see this icon right here, this means that you can pull the value from somewhere else. So for instance, if I go to this container right here, there are many things that I can configure. I can configure the width, the height, the border color, the fill color. I can configure almost every single property using some value that I pull from the outside, whether it's from a database, app state, or via an API. It makes it super, super flexible to configure just about any element, any widget, any part of your app. And so as you can guess, there's lots of potential for apps like this because users can simply generate mobile apps with the data that they may have stored somewhere. And if they have data, but it's not stored in Google Sheets, that they can easily export it as CSV and import it into Google Sheets. And once they have this data inside of Google Sheets, then all they need to do is specify the Google Sheets ID, click connect, and this app is going to regenerate itself using the data that they have stored in Google Sheets. Now, if you guys like this app and you want to take this idea further, or you're just interested to dig deeper and see how I built everything and how everything works together, then what you need to do is you want to be able to view and or clone this app. And you can do exactly that by joining our amazing Patreon community. And remember, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're not going to get access to just this app. You're going to get access to pretty much all the apps that I built on this channel. And there's more than 100 apps. I think there's like 120 plus apps that I built on this channel, and they're all going to be available for you to view and or clone in case you are interested in taking a certain app idea further and perhaps use it as a base for a much bigger project down the road. But that's not all. You're also going to get access to extra content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, and our Patreon exclusive masterclass series where I do a comprehensive deep dive on specific topics that the community votes on. And in fact, I'm going to be doing another masterclass very shortly that is going to be available exclusively to our amazing Patreon members. And above all, by joining our Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work. And that is highly appreciated. And so if all of that sounds like something you might be interested in, then you definitely want to check out our amazing Patreon community and consider becoming a member. And you can do just that using the link in the description below the video.